You have to be really close to the consumer, either talking to them, gathering insights, staying on top of the social comments. The second that you forget about that and you're just trying to push a product to sort of either suit one of your own needs or wants, or because you're just trying to check a box, that's when I think brands lose the plot.
Do you think that like if you were a good marketer, you can like market anything to
Mhm.
anyone, but you still everything is rooted into the consumer's behavior?
I think the days of just kind of paying a major celebrity for a one and done post, that seems to be over.
I think that feels over because consumers are becoming smarter.
Hey friends, welcome to Above the Fold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Servion. We're going to be talking about everything in your customer's journey. You're going to learn things about customer experience, brand experience, and marketing secrets that help you drive your brand success. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Above the Fold podcast with me, Jess Servion. Today, I am joined by someone I've admired in the brand building world for years, Liz Ahern. She's the former CMO at Chamberlain Coffee, where she helped scale one of the most recognizable creator-led brands in the coffee space. And before that, she cut her teeth at Red Bull, another brand that knows how to create culture. Now she serves as a fractional CMO through her company, Brand 555 Marketing. Welcome.
Hi, Jess. It's so great to be here.
I'm not reading off this card anymore. Tell the audience about yourself. Like, I mean, I know I mentioned the Red Bull stuff, but I want you to like really tell people who you are.
Great. I will. So I started my career at Red Bull, which was just an incredible place to learn brand building. It's actually funny. I started out more in a strategy and operation role. So I was kind of brought in to be a little bit of a data nerd. And then along the way, just absolutely fell in love with some of the people that worked in marketing. And I managed to find an incredible mentor who at the time was the VP of marketing. And she ended up being there for 20 years and was just an incredible teacher about how to build a brand and really how to think through an entire marketing mix to bring a brand story to life. And so from starting out in strategy and operations, I moved to New York to work directly for her, which was an incredible experience, and slowly found my way into field marketing, which I loved. And that was sort of like hustling, putting on events, managing the sampling team. So everyone always asks me, did I drive the cars? No, I didn't get to drive the cars, but I managed the team that drove the cars.
That's awesome. Well, also fun fact that, and I've known you a while.
Yeah.
And I literally didn't know this until today when I looked at your LinkedIn. But I didn't realize you went to Harvard.
Oh, yes.
She a bad bitch. Okay. Let's remember that. She a bad bitch. But I think that that's like so awesome that like you went to Harvard and then you ended up into this like marketing world, you know, yes, like Red Bull and Carvana and then Chamberlain and now like doing it like fractionally. But like that's so badass.
I know it's
Good for
definitely a
you.
non-traditional path from a lot of my peers, but I just fell in love with marketing and I could never go back afterwards.
Isn't it funny how like marketing will like literally take a hold of your life?
Oh, yes.
But and every brand is so different, right? Like it's so different, like the marketing tactics that you have to do, you know. What's interesting about like just even our conversation and then what we're going to get into is like you found yourself in this creator-led world working in Chamberlain, right? And like driving so much of those strategies. And I think what's an interesting dynamic that I really want you to talk about today is driving velocities at retail, but also driving community, because it's not about just like creator-led brands. Your background as a whole is all about building community.
Absolutely.
So without further ado, we'll go into the first question that I have for you here. Okay. So, I mean, I know we've talked about Red Bull and Chamberlain briefly, but what I really want to know is what stayed constant in your approach to marketing through those transitions from Red Bull to Chamberlain? Like, what did you take with you?
The most important thing is just always starting with the consumer. That was something that was sort of drilled into me in my time at Red Bull, and which was one of the cool things about being at that brand is they taught you that even though you're a part of a global brand and you sort of understand the fundamentals of what this brand's purpose is and what it stands for, there's still ways to adapt it to the local environment and to the local consumer. And so through my time at Red Bull, I really got adept at understanding consumer insights, talking to the consumer, going to events, seeing what they were passionate about or what was resonating with them about the brand. And that's the core thing that no matter what brand I've ever worked for, it always goes back to starting with that consumer and
Yes.
understanding what makes them tick, what are they watching, like what's happening in the culture that they're a part of. That's the part that's so fun for me as a marketer because that can sometimes shift and change depending on the brand, depending on the cultural landscape. And so being close to that keeps you, I feel like, young in a way. It keeps
Yeah.
you on the pulse of things.
Yeah. Do you think, in your opinion, do you think that marketers in general, like in the space, have kind of like lost sight of going, like looking at consumer insights and like talking to their consumer?
I think so. It's actually funny. I think
Yeah.
about this all the time, and it comes up a lot with sort of celebrity-led brands or creator-led brands. And I think one of the strength of sort of celebrity-led brands is from an awareness perspective, of course. You have an incredible microphone, an incredible opportunity to sort of get press mentions and just get your name out there or get your product out there. But what a lot of times people miss is you have to make sure that your product is actually relevant to the
Yeah.
lives of everyday consumers. And to do that, you have to be really close to the consumer, either talking to them, gathering insights, staying on top of the social comments. The second that you forget about that and you're just trying to push a product to sort of either suit one of your own needs or wants, or because you're just trying to check a box, that's when I think brands lose the plot.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I think not even just creator led, celebrity backed. Like I just think in general that like what I'm seeing so much happening in the space is that there's 1,000 different supplements brands, there's
Mhm.
1,000 different beverages brands. There's all these brands that are coming out and they're like, "Oh, I want." And initially it started as like I wanted to do this, but
Mhm.
then it just became like this revenue generating
Mhm.
brand. And I'm not saying everybody, okay? But I am saying like at least in the line of work that both you and I do, like
Mhm.
me on like the CX and retention side of it, you on like the full CM like marketing
Mhm.
funnel, right? Like it's so interesting that like in the space right now, just people are just in it for the money and less for the community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you have to just stay so close to your community. I mean,
Mhm.
even in the time that I was at Chamberlain Coffee, I mean, there were times where we'd launch a product and we'd get a ton of feedback from people, like, good or bad, but we really listened to that, right? And we would use that to adapt the strategy, adapt what we would come out with. And that's really important to stay across it because I think the other downside of celebrity led brands is that people are vicious on social media when
Dude.
things do not hit the mark. So you constantly have to be listening and you constantly have to be paying attention to what the consumer wants and
Yeah.
taking that feedback and using it to make your brand better.
Totally, totally. And like going back to even what you're saying about like just celebrity led brand, right? Just in particular on that, like on the Feastable side, I've shared this. This is literally our Yap session right now, but I've shared this before. We came on the market with a bar. It was dark chocolate.
Mhm.
Mr. Beast's audience is primarily a child or
Mhm.
teen, like they're,
Mhm.
or even just like a Gen Z generation,
Mhm.
right? Like people are not going to consume dark chocolate, but we didn't do the insights like
Yeah.
analysis at first. And then in the middle of it, we had to then like pivot and
Mhm.
make new iterations. And like that's why like Feastables is the brand today. But that is a learning lesson for
100%.
any brand out there is that you have to think through what your consumer is actually saying and whether you're Graza or, a brand that's just starting tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
Going through your comment sections, going through the Reddit threads and just like understanding what like what's happening on social channels can lead you to the first analysis of your consumer.
100%. I also think it's funny too. I've had people say this to me. Well, this person can move markets, right? Or this person's like a Steve Jobs. They anticipate where the consumers don't even know what they want, right? And
Right.
you're going to give it to them. And it's actually funny when it comes to a lot of brands, consumers are very smart. They actually know what they want or they know what their needs are. And maybe you can provide something to them that, that hasn't been invented before to suit their needs. But if you're creating something that doesn't suit their needs, or it doesn't taste good, or something's wrong with it,
So, yeah.
yeah, you're not going to get them to
Yeah.
buy.
Totally. I know. I think we've been all led to believe that you can market anything
Hmm.
to anybody, which I do believe on one hand. Truthfully, I
Hmm.
do believe that, right? Like I do think that like if you are a good marketer, you can like market anything to
Hmm.
anyone, but you still everything is rooted into like the consumer's behavior.
100%.
I mean, we talk about this so much. But okay, getting back to like just kind of the difference between like Red Bull and Chamberlain and like in that initial approach, right? So Red Bull was such a legacy brand. Like
Mhm.
how did you find your approach became different when you moved into a fast-growing startup?
It was really different. I mean, I think a lot of the fundamentals of brand positioning, and I think what Red Bull taught me was a lot of integrated campaign planning. So not just thinking about one tactic of your marketing mix, like paid, for example, but really thinking about how do I leverage every single part of this marketing mix to bring a campaign to life and actually break through. So those were the fundamentals that I took. But, when I came to Chamberlain Coffee, it was my first time working for a true D2C brand. I had done a stint in e-commerce before, but and working for a Shopify brand, so there's some nuances there. I had to really quickly learn performance marketing and
Yeah.
those key metrics and all of that. And then also, the landscape around influencer marketing had just changed so much. At Red Bull, we considered them opinion leaders, right? But we weren't necessarily, and I think at the time had seeding programs where we were giving out complimentary cans of Red Bull and things like that. But the landscape of influencer marketing has really shifted quite a bit. And so I had to figure out how to harness that, how to harness this sort of micro community of content creators who were,
Yeah.
super passionate about the brand and were creating their own amazing matcha and coffee concoctions and thinking through, okay, how do we harness that and leverage it for content, for organic social, for paid, et cetera. So those are some of the nuances, I think, of the landscape
Yeah.
that didn't quite apply to the Red Bull days.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, even if thinking about like your time at Carvana too,
Mhm.
right? Like or anything going from just legacy or a tech into
Mhm.
e-commerce, it is a very like different type of landscape and the influencer marketing in general, that changes every day.
Mhm.
I mean like even now, like think about where we are today,
Yep.
right? And like when you and I both were in that era of like the brands that we worked at, the influencer marketing world was so different even then. Like you
Mhm.
would just send a box and you'd be like, okay, great, you're gonna post about it, right?
Mhm.
And now people are just like, no, I'm not posting about that if it
Yep.
doesn't align with my audience. And so
Yep.
it's like you have to like really convince people, you
Yep.
know?
And also too, I mean, now with TikTok Shop, the
Yeah.
affiliate landscape has really evolved. And also too, I think there's an interesting thing that's happening with celebrity in general, where people are just a lot more critical and a lot more astute about things like paid partnerships and things that feel inauthentic. And so I don't think brands can really get by anymore with that old strategy. You really have to find either your niche communities or the partners that can really be true to your brand and that makes sense for the brand. And you have to build those relationships over time. I think the days of just kind of paying a major celebrity for a one and done post, that seems to be over.
Yeah. Well, I think that feels over because consumers are becoming smarter.
Totally.
Like think about the people who are like as millennials, right?
Mhm.
Like we're really easily influenced. Like our generation is like, "Oh, you want to go do Pilates today or you want to do Rumble?" Like
Mhm.
we're that generation that was so influenced by like the hot shit on the
Yep.
market, you know? But then like if you look at Gen Z, and even going a step further, like Gen Z and then Gen Alpha too,
Mhm.
right? Like so, because Gen Alpha will start. I wouldn't say start buying, but they're gonna ask their
Mhm.
parents to buy,
Mhm.
right? But like both of those generations in general aren't going to just pick up something just to pick it up. Like oh, because I'm talking about Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and they're like not of drinking age all of the time. But
Mhm.
the one thing that's coming to my mind is like George Clooney says that I should buy this Gen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like somebody from Gen Z is like, no, I'm gonna go buy Sprinter.
Mhm.
I'm not gonna go buy George Clooney's vodka or gin or whatever because like it doesn't align with me, but also because like just because of major celebrities behind it. Like, and even let's break that down even further, right? Like, so Kylie Jenner has Sprinter, which I've seen all over Coachella this weekend, but I don't even look at Sprinter as Kylie Jenner. I actually look at it as a Gen Z version of a hard seltzer, right? And so then like, in the past at like Coachella, I'm just using this as an example, like you might have seen a lot of like brand partnerships. Like I don't think George Clooney was one of them, but like Ciroc, you know what I mean? Like something like that, right? Like that made sense because a celebrity was backed by it. But now like the shift that you're even seeing on like the availability of brand partnerships and like just alcohol at this festival is because like the creators actually are creating a brand that is right for that market. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
And I think too what they've done really brilliantly in Kendall Jenner's 818 Tequila as well is the pop-ups and the experiences and the bringing the community members together. And of course there's influencers that are part of that, but they're really adept at figuring out how to bring their actual community and the fan base and the consumers into that experience as well. And I think especially right now Gen Z is super hungry for those in-person activations and getting to meet other people who are like them. And so I think they've done a really great job at creating those physical spaces for their consumers.
In a way, it's like field marketing is back.
Yes, and I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
For you,
I love it.
Maybe like that's the business we should just start.
I love it.
I love an experiential driven campaign too, like not to keep going back to Coachella, but it's just because there's so many activations that are happening right now, and like all these brands are just like doing these houses. And like I saw like Campari had one and oh no, it wasn't Campari. I'm sorry. Poppy had one and like Post Malone's just hanging out with all these influencers.
Yeah.
Like let's continue to bring back those days, like not just during Coachella.
Well, going back to the consumer piece, it's so fun as a brand marketer or a marketer to actually get to see your consumers in real life, see how they interact with the brand, see how excited they get about the brand experience. I mean, you don't get that behind a screen or when someone's liking a social post or even a comment. You don't really feel that emotional connection.
Yeah.
So I think that's why experiential can be so powerful. And I think that's why, after COVID, it was like really hard to kind of get that back. But now I think we're in a really good groove with experiential.
Yeah, I agree. One question that actually like popped up into my brain, just even like thinking about this, is that so when we're talking about communities, right? And like you were saying, like, okay, you don't get the same as like just liking a post or sharing a post online, and like people really want these experience driven things. But how do you walk the fine line of it not just being so influencer and like also a community for like somebody who's just the regular buyer?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's an important distinction. So it used to be back in the day when you were having a brand launch or a product launch, you would do sort of these elaborate PR boxes that you send out to influencers. You'd maybe do a media dinner or an influencer dinner. And I think over time, people who were actually buying the product saw that and thought, but wait a minute, I'm actually giving my dollars to you and I'm not really getting any of that in return. And so the smartest brands right now are really being intentional about creating these communities. So if they do a dinner or if they do an elaborate trip, they're actually bringing their customers on the trip or they're doing an amazing event as a thank you and a give back to the community. And so I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And whether it's in real life or even digital experiences too, there's brands that I work with that, have set up their broadcast channels and are doing Zoom conversations with their community just to get people together for the super fans.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting about that too as a marketer is it's not always your highest LTV customer that's the most engaged community-wise.
Right.
It might be someone who's just really passionate and maybe they've bought one or two products, but they really love the brand and they have that emotional connection to the brand.
Yes.
And so figuring out how to provide different sets of experiences or different touch points for different customers depending on where they are in their journey and sort of their affinity for the brand.
Yeah, totally. I absolutely agree with you that the smartest brands are allowing the rest of the community coming in. I'm not going to name names in this, but I will tell you, it's not a bad thing necessarily, but like there's a brand that like I have worked with and I, pushed a lot of like, okay, well, you want to build community, you want to do these things, and that's really great. But like what I'm seeing them do is these more influencer driven type of
Mhm.
things, and their community is so strong, like so
Mhm.
absolutely strong. Like just the regular people who are buying their product for them or telling their friends about it, right? But they're not actually rewarding that
Mhm.
consumer, and they're only rewarding like the influencer friends of it, which I mean, I'm sure sales are great and like all of those things, but at some point when the consumer shifts and the
Mhm.
consumer's like, well, if I'm not really a part of this, like, why do I keep giving you my dollar for it?
Mhm.
Like, they can just go to a different brand. And I don't want to name the mark, any of it,
Yeah.
because you'll figure it out. But yeah, it's just a bummer. Like
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like the smartest brands are bringing the common buyer into those situations, and you don't see it that often.
And making them the hero, right? Celebrating them because
Yeah.
I mean, really, they are what's propping up the brand. They are contributing in such a vibrant way. They're sharing it with their friends. There's word of mouth there, and there's sort of power in that collective of maybe small creators or small people who can spread that word of mouth when you can harness that, right? Versus just going after a macro or someone with 100,000 plus followers.
Yeah. And I mean, and I think the other side of it too is like because there are so many like creators and celebrities out there, but any day those creators or celebrities can be canceled too. So it's like
100%. There's so much risk.
do not hitch your wagon
Yeah.
to them, you know?
Yeah.
Well, in the same vein of like talking about community, what I'm curious is what's your definition between community versus audience?
Mm, that's a really good question. I think of audience as maybe the people who are a little bit more passive, right? So they may be your social followers, right? They may be people who have purchased from you. They may be people who see an ad. I think of the community as the people who have that deep emotional connection with the brand.
Yeah.
So they're really engaged. It's almost a two-way conversation versus a one-way conversation. And so the community are the people who are going to give you the feedback on things, good or bad, right? Because they're really invested. They're the people who are going to come out to your activations. They're the people who are going to comment on different product drops and tell you how excited they are. So there's a different level of engagement than just the audience network, which I feel like is a bit more passive.
Yeah, I agree with you. I, you know, one of the other things that I've come across a lot lately is like the role of community manager
Mhm.
versus like a field marketer or
Mhm.
even a brand manager, right?
Mhm.
Like all three of those types of
Mhm.
roles. What's really interesting that I'm finding is brands are really just kind of jumbling up all three of those roles into one, and maybe they're calling it the community manager, a
Mhm.
field marketer, or brand manager, but what's interesting is like all of them have the same kind of responsibilities. So I'd love to just, because I know a lot of people would benefit from this,
Mhm.
what is your definition of a community manager?
Mm. I think of a community manager less so of field marketing and more so about creating sort of almost a virtual community or
Mhm.
virtual engagement. And so this is the person who's going to be like in the DMs, in the comments. It's kind of a hybrid almost of a CX role
Yeah.
along with a social role, right? Where they're just constantly engaging. And some of that can also translate to in-person events as well. But I think of field marketing as a bit more of that in-person
Mhm.
experiential type of role, and the community manager as a bit more of the virtual steward of the brand in a
Yeah,
way.
totally. I've talked to a few community managers like just in the last couple of weeks because I was helping like a brand launch and they like hired for a community manager and then they wanted them to like do all this strategy and stuff. And like what's so interesting is that so I hooked this person up with four other community managers across other brands, and all of them have something different.
That's
And
so
all of them,
interesting.
like
Yeah.
one's virtual, one's field marketing, one's this, one's that. And one of the struggles that she was finding is like, okay, I'm supposed to create this strategy,
Mhm.
but because nothing is linear for any of these brands when it comes to
Mhm.
like metrics or
Mhm.
responsibilities, like it's just literally just like, I hope this works, you know?
It's so hard. And I think it's hard for any brand too, because this is such a new space.
Yeah.
I don't think brands really had to think about this as much before, but we're in such a different paradigm. And the fact that even, sort of all these brands have created this role, I think is really exciting.
Yeah.
But everyone's trying to navigate and figure out what's the right fit, what's the right set of responsibilities, what's that crossover of virtual and real life.
Yeah, I agree. And then going back to like even just like the field marketer versus community manager versus brand manager, I also see brand manager getting confused too. Sometimes I see brand manager as like the influencer manager, and I'm like, that's not the same,
Totally. And even brand manager at a more established company is really different from a lot of, e-com companies' brand manager. I mean,
Yeah.
you're managing the P&L as a brand manager at General Mills or Procter and Gamble. It's like a more of a GM style role.
Yeah.
So it runs the gamut.
I know. And then it's like, just because you put brand manager on it, it doesn't mean brand marketing all the time.
Yes.
It's just, I think marketing roles in general are just so, everybody's just making up new things every day.
Yep.
Truthfully.
Yep.
Okay, staying on the same thing about community though, and like just kind of like where it kind of goes wrong. Do you think brands are chasing the wrong metrics when it comes to community?
Mm.
Because that, like, I'm seeing that across too. It's like, it's not just about engagement.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do you even track like LTV, the ROI of this, like any of it? I'm just curious. Like,
Yeah. That's a really interesting point, because I think if you're thinking about community efforts, it's not, I think of it not always as going to be a direct revenue driving engine,
mhm.
maybe even in that quarter, right? I think about this as something that's setting up the brand for success long term. So I think of that community piece as, going back to my original point, being close to the consumer, right? Being close to the fans of the brand, understanding what they care about, what gets them excited. And harnessing that feedback to make the brand better over time.
Yeah.
and make it more adaptable to the current zeitgeist. So, and that's not something that might pay dividends like right in that quarter, right? It's not necessarily about getting that community member to buy one more thing. It's about getting the feedback and figuring out how to build long-term brand equity. And
Yes.
that is going to pay dividends over several years.
Yes. You've heard it here first. Community management is mostly an awareness play and a post-purchase play,
Yeah.
a retention play.
Yeah.
My favorite.
I love it.
Okay. So we've talked a lot about community. We've talked a lot about creator-led, celebrity-backed. Like, I really want to talk about retail
Mhm.
because retail is often, it's a very confusing space when you think about retail marketing, right?
Mhm.
There's also so many roles with that, right?
Yep.
What is a shopper marketer?
Yep.
And what does that actually
Yep.
mean, So let's start with this. What does velocity actually mean from a marketer's point of view? Like when I'm driving velocity.
So velocity is all about getting product to move off the shelf. So it can be measured in two ways. You can measure it in dollars per SKU per store per week, or units per SKU per store per week. And that basically is a retailer and a brand's way of assessing the sell-through rate of that product and essentially the success of it. And as I think about velocity, there's sort of two, forces at work, right? There's a push element and then there's a consumer pull element. So the push element, of course, is your distribution, right? Making sure that the product is actually on the shelf, which is hard for a lot of brands because you might not have a field sales team, you might not have merchandisers.
Yeah.
So actually making sure that your product is on the shelf and not sitting in the back of the warehouse some days is some of the hardest parts. So that's the fundamentals of it. But then there's also the marketing aspect of it, or the consumer pull. And that's all about the things that you do sort of outside of the store to get people into the store to actually pick that product off the shelf.
Right. And what do you think the best strategies, because this is also another thing that there's no right answer to this.
Mhm.
What do you think the best strategies are to drive a consumer to purchase from a store?
So I think there's two things. I mean, first of all, the most important source of awareness for the vast majority of consumers is actually going to be at the store level on shelf. So having a really good shelf placement, which means at eye level, so you're not at the top shelf, you're not at the very bottom, is going to be one of the most successful things you can do. Now, that's going to take a lot of coordination and negotiation between your sales team and showing success to get those prime placements in store.
Yeah.
The other thing is making sure, because not every consumer is going to go down that aisle that your product is on, right? Some people only shop the perimeter. Some people only go to checkout. So the more places of distribution that you can be in the store, whether it's with an off-shelf display or in a cooler or even doing a partnership with a brand to get in an entirely different section of the store, that's going to increase your chances of success, because that's going to increase your chances that a random consumer is going to find your product and you have a chance to convince them to purchase it. So I would say what you do in store is really, really important, and oftentimes I think is sort of overlooked or neglected in a way. I think the other thing is thinking through, how do you create that awareness and that demand before someone even goes in the store? And so how can you send people and get them excited about finding the store that you're sold in and picking you off the shelf? And so that's all about sort of getting into the brains of a consumer before they even shop,
Yeah.
driving that awareness, driving that relevance. And that can be done through a variety of different marketing channels. I'm sort of agnostic of the best channel. It's really just what's the best fit for your consumer and for your brand.
Yeah. I mean, agreed, right? Like it all depends. You know, we were talking about seltzer, for instance, right? Like, so one of the things I was working with like another seltzer brand. And one of the things that when we were like just talking about them going into like retail and all these things, and like they were so used to like pulling levers off of like TikTok and these other places and like creating content about them sampling in the store, but that worked in those moments, right? But then how do you continue that, right? It's like that is one channel, then you have to like focus on another channel, and sometimes even just an alcohol brand, like your levers are completely different than I don't know, a supplement.
Yep.
Right? Like a supplement could probably like advertise way more
Yep.
than an alcohol brand.
Totally. There's so many regulations. You have to be so conscientious too about age gating. Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
But on that same vein though, what levers can a marketer actually pull to increase velocity in retail?
So again, I go back to what's best for your brand and for your consumer. But one of the things too that I think is really important, and this was some of the foundational elements of Red Bull, is we really thought about what are the occasions in which a consumer is going to be enjoying the brand, right? And that was all about driving relevance for the product. And so thinking about for a seltzer brand, right? Party and socializing, the biggest occasion, the biggest moment. So how can you have a sampling campaign to be a part of the biggest and the best party and socializing moments? How can you have ad creative that shows people having a good time? How can you seed influencers and micro creators and content creators during those moments to create that demand and to create that trial for people? And so they're like, oh, I tried this. This was amazing. I had a great time with it. Now I'm going to go pick it up in store.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the ways. I also think too, more and more showing that path to purchase actually in store. So leveraging influencers or content creators, posting on organic social, showing you actually going into the store, whether it's your red Target basket and putting the product in the basket and showing what shelf it's on. Because I think what happens is these mass retailers are so big, people might not even know what aisle your product is on, where they can find you. So the more that you can help orient people with, okay, here's exactly where to go find us in store. And there's never too much of that style of content, I think. So getting really comfortable with integrating that into your social handles, leveraging it on paid and using it across, all of your channels, really.
Totally. And I really agree with you. And I think that the really, really important factor in what you just said too is that like big retailers, you might be on one shelf, but then in a store in Austin, Texas versus Los Angeles, California could be completely different, right? Yeah. So it's the repetition of seeing that Target basket or that Walmart basket and seeing like where you could potentially be found and utilizing those social channels will literally drive the psychology of that consumer.
Yes. Yes. And you want to be top of mind when someone's actually going to shop, right? And, depending on the category, it might be an impulse purchase, right? Or someone's just stopping into a convenience store to pick something up, or it might be part of their, Sunday planned grocery shop where you have to make sure that you are on that grocery list for them, or that they discover you when they're in store and they think, oh, that's cool packaging, or that seems different. I want to try this out. So
Yeah.
you have to find ways to sort of get in the head of the consumer when they're in that shop mindset.
Totally. I am also curious about what are your thoughts on packaging in retail?
Mm.
Do you think that like and I'm literally just making this question up in this moment, but do you think that packaging should vary between D2C versus retail?
Yes, your packaging at retail is the most important thing about your brand. It is quite possibly the only thing that a consumer will ever see about your brand. So, and you have 2 seconds to grab their attention in store. So what I always say about packaging, especially as you're talking to retailers, is physically go into the store, take photos of the set, see what are other brands, what does their packaging look like? How can we stand out and be different and be eye-catching? Does the color of this packaging actually hold up under the harsh fluorescent lights of the store? Because a lot of times something looks really great digitally on a computer screen, and then when you actually go to print it and you put it in store, it looks so different. And so being mindful of that, and then also understanding what are the call outs that you need to have on the front of your packaging, because most people won't ever look at the back of the package. So that is really important real estate on the front to communicate what your brand's about, why this product is better than the alternatives, and why they should even pick you up.
Yeah. Right in this moment, I just had an epiphany about my own packaging for my brand.
Oh, yay.
Literally.
I love it.
We'll talk about it later.
I can't wait to hear it.
I literally just had an epiphany. I was like, and actually I'll just share it. Like, so we know that I'm in the process of building my own brand, right? And like one of the things that's really important to me is more maximalist versus minimalist. But when you were talking and about like what are the benefits and putting that on the front of that package, I was just thinking to myself, I was like, if I go too maximalist, they'll get lost. Because if I'm on shelf, like that might be great for D2C because I can like sell the story on web or Amazon or wherever it is that I'm being sold. But then if I'm on shelf and I'm trying to stand out amongst, all the other sleep brands, right? Yeah. Like I really have to share my benefits within 2 seconds.
Yeah, 2 seconds.
So I had an epiphany.
I love it.
I'm literally in the middle of my brand visual or my visual brand identity right now. So
I love it.
Thanks, Liz.
You're welcome. Adding value already.
Okay. Staying on like the retail thing though, I'm really curious in your opinion, what mistakes do you see D2C brands making when entering retail?
I think the biggest one, and it's a challenge, is going too big too fast, right? So you're a hot D2C brand, you get the interest from several retailers, you want to push for sort of national authorization. And a lot of times what happens is you get on the shelf, but you don't have the velocities to actually stay on the shelf, and you don't really have the marketing dollars or the resources to actually move the velocity. And so you'll get discontinued, maybe a year or 2 years later. And so I think it's much more prudent for brands to figure out, okay, can we start with one retailer in a specific geography, build up enough demand and success here to get that authorization nationally, and just build and move slow. I think, especially in a time frame where so many brands have to focus on profitability, this like hyper scale doesn't necessarily need to happen anymore. I think if you can start slow, prove it out, and build, again, that community, that fan base, that following, that's a much more sustainable path.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in your opinion, then, how do you build repeat purchasing and loyalty beyond just trial in retail?
I think it starts with the product. You have to have an exceptional product experience, because if the product doesn't taste good, if there's something off about it, or if it doesn't solve that problem, you're not going to get that repeat. And so, and even you could do sort of focus groups with consumers, have people try it, get a ton of data and feedback before you go to launch, so that you know exactly when it launches that it's going to hit and that repeat is going to be really strong. I think at retail, the challenge, unlike D2C, is like you lose all those touch points with the consumer, right? So you don't really always get to send them an email or an SMS and get them back in the door. Although some of the things you did at Feastable, I actually thought were really smart in terms of having QR codes on the packaging or gamifying that trial experience to try and get some of that consumer data to try and get someone back in the door at another point. But
Yeah.
you don't always have that luxury.
No, you don't always have that luxury. I mean, I'm such an advocate for QR codes on packaging. Shout out to Kate Stevens, co-founder of Bridge, Brij. This is not an ad moment. I'm literally just saying this is like one marketer to the other,
Yep.
right? Like she and Bridge really changed my opinion about QR codes, specifically when we went to retail and also when we launched internationally. Because we used to just use those QR codes as like a link tray. It was just like, oh, scan it, cool.
Yeah.
Here's a bunch of links or whatever. But you can create a product experience.
Yep.
Like if you're curious about, okay, you've picked up a Feastables bar or I don't know, whatever it is. Like there's a million hydration brands, right? Like there's a million of those, right? And I picked up a hydration brand and there's a QR code on it. I can learn more about this product, but I can also have like a whole brand experience behind that QR code.
Yes.
Such a simple way to build that product experience, but also such a simple way to get first party data.
100%. And even to get feedback
Yeah.
on, did someone like it? Was it hard to find? Was it easy to find? I mean, if there's any way to sort of increase those feedback loops, it's super valuable for a brand.
Totally. And I put a survey behind this QR code and found, here's an interesting insight.
Love it.
I know I've shared this insight a lot, but like what was so interesting is when we were D2C at Feastables and then entered into retail, everybody was like, okay, we know our customer because you know your customer from D2C,
Yes.
right? And so then I had a theory. I was like, let me put a survey behind this QR code. And I then found that 90% of our buyers were coming from Walmart, and which is fine, like great. Like we knew that was like based off of like our numbers we were selling and like D2C going down. But then we were like, well, let's survey those customers, right? And then that actually led to doing the focus groups and doing further like analysis. So if you start, I don't know, this is just like, again, shout out to Bridge, but if you start now, you can potentially like eliminate losing your customer later.
I love it. The other thing I think that's interesting about that too is once you go into retail, you're opening the door to such a new audience and customer base than your D2C audience. And it's going to be a lot more based on who's actually shopping that category or shopping in that aisle. And that actually might be quite different than whatever base that you had on direct to consumer. And
Totally.
it can be a really good symbiotic relationship because a retailer is excited that you are bringing a new audience to that category or that set, and that's incremental to them because you're driving foot traffic in the store, but it's also good for the brand because you're exposing your brand to a new audience and new eyeballs.
Yeah.
But I think the important consideration of that is understand the dynamics of that category, of that aisle, right?
Yes.
Who are the shoppers of that aisle? Because it might be quite different. They might want really different things. And so you may have to communicate differently to them. You may even have to tweak or adapt your product to meet those needs over time, or introduce new products that can suit those needs over time.
I mean, this is literally all data. Like if you just spend some time looking at consumer insights and like who's actually shopping in those aisles, like you can uncover so much more. D2C versus retail, totally different beast.
Yes.
Liz, she is the girl for retail. Me, D2C. Straight up. We always say that.
Yep.
I'm like,
Yep.
I don't want to do that. That's good. Thank you. I will call me your e-commerce bestie. Okay. But one of the things that was like popping into my head when we were talking about community and talking about like even like Feastables and Chamberlain and all of these things, what's your take as a marketer on giveaways? And like, but sorry, actually, let me ask that again. What is your take on giveaways for celebrity backed brands?
This is a really interesting question. So what I have found, even when I was at Red Bull and we would do consumer activations or things like that, you are reaching such a small portion of your audience, right? And a lot of times with a giveaway, you're going to be reaching people who are not really there for the product. They're there for that free thing, for that free experience. If that experience is done right, you're bringing in a brand fan and maybe converting them through that long-term brand equity. But if the experience is just something random, like a chance to win a car, for example, you're just going to find people that just want to win a car, right? And they may not care at all about ever purchasing that product again, right? So I think you really have to tailor that giveaway experience to make it right for the brand,
Yeah.
make it right for the consumer. But honestly, I don't think it's really worth the time, the energy, or the money to do them. I would rather use
Multiple of them.
yeah, maybe use those dollars elsewhere. I mean, maybe if you were to do one big blowout experience, it could be really valuable, but you have to be really intentional about why you're doing the giveaway.
Totally. And as somebody who has delivered 11 Teslas, I can tell you firsthand, because I talked to all 11 of these
Yep.
people, they do not care.
Yep.
They wanted the free item. They
Yep.
wanted the free money, right? And I mean, it wasn't a trick question
Yeah.
that I asked you. I'm just curious because we
Yeah.
both have like lived in this world.
Totally.
I think that just that creator-led, celebrity-backed, like created this illusion that like giveaways are just such a good marketing play.
Mhm.
But the equity of that consumer you're bringing in, whether retail or D2C, 9 times out of 10 is not really worth it.
Yeah.
So it's a good play for sure, but not a consistent play.
Yes. At Red Bull, we had this phrase, is it something only Red Bull can do, or is it fully Red Bull ownable? And so even if there was a contest or a sweepstakes, the experience itself had to be something that you could only get from Red Bull. And the theory behind that is that the people who are competing in that are going to be so excited about that Red Bull experience and that Red Bull moment that they're going to be long-term fans of the brand. And you're sort of creating a better brand experience. And so I think for a brand that's looking to do a giveaway or some sort of sweepstakes, like you really have to go back. Is it something that only our brand can do? Or is it an
Yeah.
experience that only we can provide? And our community is going to get so excited about the potential to participate in this.
Yeah. I agree. One of the giveaways that really sticks out to me is Ridge Wallet.
Mm-hmm.
They gave away a Bronco, and it was when Broncos like first came back on the
Mhm.
market, and I forget which version of it. And even though it was a giveaway for a car, right? They did it so smart. They
Mhm.
did it so smart. Just having had lived in these
Mhm.
spaces, right? Like they did it so smart. I
Mhm.
wish that I knew these things then, right? So they gave away the Bronco, but you get entries
Mhm.
into it, and every dollar that you spend is like an entry or whatever. And so then like on the landing page would be the Bronco. You know, here's your entry. Okay, then you can get more if you buy this wallet, right? And then they like had all of their collections on it. So obviously it drove sales, right?
Mhm.
But then it's bringing those people into the funnel.
Yeah.
Instead of just saying enter to win or every purchase is an entry into this giveaway. And instead, it's actually like making them think about the products that they want to purchase in addition to their initial entry. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So you're bringing them into the
Mhm.
funnel and you're actually making that consumer a little bit more valuable for you.
Yep. Absolutely. That's a really interesting dissection. I want to dig more into what they did.
Yeah, I still have it, like, because I was doing some advising for like a giveaway for like another brand, and I like literally broke it down. So I will share this
I
with
love
you.
it.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to ask you a couple more questions, and then we're gonna get into some rapid fire and
Okay.
stuff.
I'm ready.
But I kind of want to talk about like your work now as like a fractional CMO, and obviously like you don't have to name the brands, you know, like we all walked this fine line, right? But what I'm really curious for you coming in as a fractional CMO into a brand, what's the first thing that you do when working with a brand?
That's a great question.
And looking at their marketing.
Yeah, it can vary by brand depending on what their highest priority need is. But typically, what I like to do is I like to go in and do a bit of a marketing audit, just as the average consumer, right? So I think about it as, okay, I'm going to go to your social channels, your email, your SMS. I'm going to go to your website. I'm just going to look and see, what do I perceive that this brand is trying to communicate to me?
Yeah.
What's jumping out at me? And is there consistency across all of these touch points? Or is social talking in one way and then I get to the website and it feels kind of different?
Girl. Yeah.
Yeah. And so is there a lack of consistency across these touch points? And then what I love to do is I love to do a onboarding questionnaire with the marketing team or with the founder, where I sort of go through some of the questions that kind of would lead someone to trying to understand what their brand positioning or the brand strategy is. And that's always a very interesting way in to understand, is there a disconnect between what the whole team thinks is going on with the brand and the brand positioning and what the consumer is actually seeing and what's not being translated. So I love to start there because I think no matter what the marketing opportunity is, I think it all starts with the brand strategy and brand positioning. And so understanding what do they have? Do they have existing guidelines or do they just have like aesthetics, right? Was it just a vibe?
Yeah.
And now we have to think through, okay, how do we build a strategy around this? Or do we need to think about repositioning altogether
Yeah.
in order to create that stronger connection?
Yeah.
And then from there, once we have that very clearly then dictates, okay, how do we message about this brand? Who are we going after? What media do we need to think about in order to reach them? But I go back to the brand because, at the end of the day, you have to understand what do you stand for? And is this something that's actually going to resonate with who you're trying to reach?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I also I think that approach is beautiful. And I also want to just say this is why when you're bringing in like a fractional CMO or even a CXO and like both the lines have worked out like we do, it is very imperative that we do a brand strategy exercise because 9 times out of 10, even on my side, even on like the retention pieces or the CX pieces of things, when I'm coming in just for those projects, 9 times out of 10, what I find is like it literally is just a visual guideline that we have. Nobody, like we have lost touch with like who the customer personas are. Like nobody actually knows what the strategy is anymore. And then because, and maybe this is just my hot take, but what I find so much of happening is that everybody's just moving so fast all the time that when you originally started that brand as like 2 co-founders, 1 co-founder, or you and your team of 4 people has completely shifted when you become 10, 15, 20, 100 people. And you do need to go through an exercise of looking at your brand strategy again and repositioning it. And so when bringing in a fractional CMO, CXO, you're like, this is the first thing that you can expect. We're tearing it down.
I love it. And I love what you said too, because I tell everyone CX is a brand touch point.
Yeah.
It actually may be one of the most important brand touch points in terms of actually building, a lifetime brand fan. It can be so powerful. And when it's sort of neglected or when you don't have a clear tone of voice or a brand personality, when there's not guidelines for people in terms of how to interact with customers, what are your policies around addressing some of these challenges that might come up? It's so important to me that brand guideline has to extend throughout the entire business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much there. Honestly, I think we're going to need a round 2 of this. I have an idea for us already.
Great.
It comes in the form of a white paper.
Oh, we love a white paper.
Okay, so one more question on this subject because I'm really curious for you. But, going from these roles, sitting in a brand full time, right? And like director level, CMO, like all these things. How has your leadership style evolved now working as a fractional CMO? Like how do you lead by also advising?
That's a great question. It's very different, I think, because unlike sort of being in the day-to-day of a brand, my role now is really trying to influence and guide.
Yeah.
I'm not always the final decision maker on things anymore. I'm really there to provide a recommendation. But at the end of the day, it's the team that's working in-house or the founder, the CEO, that really has to then take that and operationalize that. And sometimes I'm there to support on some of those executional elements. So my job is really there to be almost like a coach in a sense and to help illuminate and show them the potential or what might be missing, and then create a compelling enough recommendation and really show what the end result is going to be for them if they're able to do this. Whereas I think also when you're in-house at a brand, there's so many things that are coming your way. You don't always get a chance to sort of pull back and take a peek at the holistic strategy. You're just kind of in the weeds fighting fires sometimes. And so being able to have more of that outside perspective, I think, is really valuable. And I also, what I appreciate now too about this role is that I get to see across different brands and different categories too. So I get to understand something's happening over here. I wonder if it's going to work for this brand in this category. Or I'm seeing something happening in like the broader paid landscape and everything is sort of breaking down. So we need to pivot across all of these brands.
Yeah.
And it's a really valuable experience that I can now bring where when you're in-house, you don't always you don't always get to kind of pull back and understand what's happening in different categories.
Totally. Absolutely. And I mean, this is granted, this is our livelihood now, right? But this is why I am so about fractional work rather than like you don't always have to hire somebody full time. Like you could have somebody who comes in fractionally who still sits with your brand and really gets it, but then they've been able to in that moment also work with other brands to bring those things back to your brand in particular, to be like, okay, well, we can like re-strategize and do these things, because you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, I think this is the same for you too, right? Like when you're working full time in just one brand, you're only seeing one thing, and you can go to the conferences and you can do all the things, but it's like, it's really hard when you only see one thing. And my one thing was slanging chocolate bars.
Yeah.
Yours was slanging coffee or Red Bull,
Yep.
like you only just see that one thing. So I'm just a strong advocate for fractional work and like coming in and being like, hey, we're here to help.
Exactly. And you can be a part of I think sometimes people think, well, if someone's not in day to day, they're going to miss something, right? Or they're not going to feel as responsible for the business outcomes. And I think a good fractional leader is going to work with whoever the client contact is, whether it's the founder or the CEO, and they're going to feel inspired and excited about delivering great business outcomes for that brand, and inspired about sort of getting in there with the team and working with the team. And so I think some of those fears can be massaged away if you find the right fractional leader.
Yeah, totally. I think also like I'm answering like the question too, but like on my end, I can only operate at 110%, like in anything that I do, right? And so then what that translates to when I'm helping a client isn't just about like, okay, cool, I'm going to advise you and like maybe you'll pick it up, maybe you won't. I genuinely start caring about the people, and I genuinely, when I even talk about like a brand's product, I'm like, our product.
Yes.
Yeah, I like notice that even in myself, it's like I like that ownership of it. So it's like, my point is that even if you hire somebody fractionally, they can really care about your brand the same way that you do too. And they can give you those eyes outside of your brand.
Definitely. And I'm a consumer of all the brands that I
Yeah.
work for. I mean, not just that I sometimes get samples, which is incredible to experience the product, but then 9 times out of 10, I also become a consumer where I'm purchasing it. I'm invested. I want to see what the customer experience is like. It's a ton of fun.
Totally. I just bought 2 versions of creatine last week from 2 of my different clients. Okay, rapid fire, just a couple of questions for you, but I'm curious. If you could build a brand tomorrow with any creator or celebrity, who would it be and what would the product be? And don't give anything away.
Oh, this is a really challenging one. I'm trying to think. I mean, I talk about Lauren Bostic of the Skinny Confidential all the time, but
I love
that girl can sell
beauty water.
She can sell toilet paper. I mean, I don't even know what product it would be. Honestly, anything she puts her name on, I think she's just built an incredible content empire and retail empire.
Totally. Okay. So what would you build with Lauren then?
Ooh, it have to be something in the better for you space. I think beauty is too saturated.
You know what's funny? Beauty is so saturated, but she literally has built a brand, and she's like, for her path, it's not as saturated.
Yeah.
Toilet paper.
I know. Okay, actually, I know what it is. I know that like scents or candles or things like that are supposed to be toxic and not good for you. But if you can create a really amazing home scent or diffuser or something that's non-toxic, yes, that. Because I always like to have my house smelling good.
But then you feel so guilty about it.
And then I'm like, am I increasing, do I have toxins everywhere in this house?
Dude, I don't want to name this brand at all too. Like, I like to say agnostic up in here, okay? Yeah. But I, in my new apartment, am sitting next to my diffuser, and I love this brand. It's a D2C brand, and I'm sitting next to the diffuser, and every night when I go to sleep, I'm like, that smells so nice, but I think it's really bad for I should probably turn that off, and I never do.
I know. We got to have our things.
I know. Okay. So The last thing I want to ask you is, where can the audience find you?
You can find me on Instagram at brand555_marketing. Also, and TikTok as well. If you need any support with fractional services, come find me at brand555.com. There's a contact form, fill it out. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. But yeah, I think if you are interested in learning more about brand building or marketing, I think following my socials is the best place.
And she is the absolute best. Liz, I learned so much in just this moment. I mean, granted, I know we like talk frequently, but like I had an epiphany about my own brand.
I love it.
Also, double down. Retail's fun. This is your girl. Okay.
There we go.
E-commerce, I'm the girl.
We can make retail fun.
Yeah, retail can be fun. I just like love owning the customer is the problem.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate everybody tuning in for another episode of Above the Fold, and we'll catch you next week.
Dang, we've made it to the end of the podcast and you're still here. So thank you so much for listening to Above the Fold podcast. For the best of this episode and every episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And for deeper dives on the secrets to brand success, don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Sunday Postcards. All right, my dudes and gals, see you next week.